Everyone in the aquarium hobby tells you the same thing. Pothos. Just use Pothos. So, I did something nobody else has actually done. I ran 8 land plants head-to-head in identical tanks for 60 days. Same fish, same water, same load. And the results were not what I expected. Here's the conversation that started this whole experiment. I was in a fish forum, the kind where everyone has strong opinions and nobody has actual data, and someone asked, "Is there anything better than Pothos for land plant filtration?" And within 60 seconds, the thread exploded. Pothos is king, nothing comes close. Peace Lily destroys Pothos, not even a debate. Spider plant, full stop. You're all wrong, Chinese Evergreen wins. 47 replies, 0 actual measurements. So I decided to run the experiment myself. 8 plants, identical setups, 60 days. Every 7 days, I tested nitrates, phosphates, and water clarity in each tank. I want to show you the full results, plant by plant, because some of what happened genuinely surprised me. But I'm saving the #1 performer for the end, because it's not the plant you're expecting, and the margin it won by is not small. Before I show you the results, let me explain why land plants work in aquariums at all. Because most people use them without understanding why they work. And if you don't understand the mechanism, you can't make smart choices about which ones to use. Here's the core science in 60 seconds. Your aquarium runs on a nitrogen cycle. Fish produce ammonia. Bacteria in your filter convert that ammonia to nitrite, then to nitrate. Nitrate accumulates. You remove it with water changes. That last part, the removal, is where most filtration systems stop. Your filter is a converter. It transforms waste, but it doesn't export it. Land plants are exporters. They pull nitrate and phosphate directly out of the water and lock it into leaf tissue. When you trim those leaves and throw them away, the pollution leaves the tank permanently. But here's why land plants specifically outperform aquatic plants at this job. Aquatic plants fight for CO2. In water, CO2 moves 10,000 times slower than in air. Every underwater plant is running at a fraction of its photosynthetic potential. Land plants keep their leaves in the air where CO2 is unlimited. So their photosynthesis runs at full speed. To fuel that growth, they pull nutrients from the water at a rate fully submerged plants simply cannot match. That's the theory. Now, let's look at what actually happened when I tested 8 of them. 8 identical 10-gallon tanks. Same tap water, same dechlorinator, same cycled filter media from the same established tank. Each tank stocked with the same load, 6 ember tetras and 4 corydoras. Every plant was prepared identically, removed from soil, roots washed thoroughly under running water until 0 soil remained, then soaked in clean water for 72 hours before installation. No soil residue, no fertilizer contamination, clean start. Each plant was mounted with only roots submerged, leaves above the water line at all times. I tested nitrates, phosphates, and water clarity every 7 days using the same API test kit throughout. No water changes performed during the 60 days, so any difference in parameters was purely the plant's doing. One tank had no land plant at all, just the standard hang-on filter. That was my control, the benchmark everything else had to beat. Let's go through them. Plant 8, Lucky Bamboo. Lucky Bamboo looks like it belongs in an aquarium. That clean architectural shape, the Zen aesthetic. It photographs beautifully. The nitrate data told a different story. At day 60, the Lucky Bamboo tank showed nitrate levels only 11% lower than the control tank with no land plant. The reason is simple biology. Lucky Bamboo, which is technically a Dracaena, not bamboo at all, is a slow grower. And slow growth means slow nutrient consumption. A plant that puts out one new leaf every 3 weeks is not pulling meaningful quantities of nitrate from your water. It's not harmful, it won't rot easily, and it tolerates a wide range of conditions. But if your goal is biological filtration, Lucky Bamboo is primarily decoration. Rank 8. Beautiful. Functional only in the loosest sense. Plant 7. Snake plant. The snake plant result surprised me, not because it performed well, but because it performed at all. Snake plants are succulents. Their entire biology is built around surviving drought, not thriving in water. The conventional wisdom is that prolonged root submersion kills them. My snake plant didn't die, but it didn't grow either. In 60 days, it produced 0 new leaves, 0 measurable growth. Nitrate reduction, 14% compared to control. Marginally better than Lucky Bamboo, but not significantly. What the snake plant does have is patience. It won't rot quickly. It won't crash your tank if something goes wrong. And above the waterline, it looks genuinely architectural. Those upright sword leaves create a dramatic visual. But as a filtration tool, the data doesn't support the reputation. Rank 7. Unkillable. Barely useful. Plant 6. English Ivy. English Ivy is the plant on this list with the widest variance in results across hobbyists. Some people run it successfully for over a year. Others watch it collapse within weeks. My result landed in the middle. It grew. Nitrate reduction at day 60, 23% below control. Decent, not exceptional. But here's the issue that the data doesn't fully capture. English Ivy is finicky about root conditions. Stagnant water around the roots triggers rot faster than almost any other plant on this list. My setup had good filter outflow circulation past the roots. Without that, the trajectory would have been different. The margin for error with English Ivy is narrow. It rewards a specific setup and punishes anything less than consistent conditions. Rank 6. Works in the right setup. Too variable for a confident recommendation. Plant 5. Monstera. Monstera is the Instagram plant. Those fenestrated leaves, the ones with the holes, look extraordinary hanging above a tank. No other plant on this list produces a visual impact quite like it. The filtration data was solid. Nitrate reduction at day 60, 29% below control. There's a catch. That doesn't show up in the numbers. Monstera grows fast once it establishes, and as it matures, it pushes leaves more aggressively. Those leaves develop calcium oxalate crystals, mildly toxic to fish if they decay into the water, which means any yellowing leaf needs to come off before it can break down and hit the water column. With Pothos, you can be a little lazy. With Monstera, you cannot. The monitoring commitment is real, but the aesthetics are genuinely extraordinary. Rank 5. High performance, higher maintenance. Worth it if you're paying attention. Plant 4. Tradescantia, or Wandering Jew. Okay, this is the first plant on this list that made me stop and look at the data twice. Tradescantia zebrina, the Wandering Jew, or inch plant, is not a plant most aquarium hobbyists know. It's a garden plant, a hanging basket plant. In some parts of the US, it's considered an invasive weed. In my tank, it was the fastest growing plant in the experiment. By day 14, 2 weeks in, The Tradescantia had already produced more new growth than the Pothos tank had at day 30. Nitrate reduction at day 60, 38% below control. It grows so aggressively, it can actually outcompete aquatic plants for nutrients, which means if you have a heavily planted aquascape below the waterline, Tradescantia above it will compete with your submerged plants. Something to manage, not necessarily a problem. And the color, purple, silver, and green striped leaves catching the light above a tank is genuinely unlike anything else on this list visually. Rank 4, underrated, fast, gorgeous, needs management but rewards it. If you're finding this useful, subscribe for more experiments. Here's where I need to tell you something. The top 3 plants in this experiment all beat Pothos. Not marginally, significantly. And the number 1 plant beat the Pothos tank by a margin that honestly made me question why Pothos became the default recommendation in the first place. But before I show you number 1, let me show you where Pothos actually landed in the ranking. Because I think even Pothos fans are going to be surprised. Plant 3, Pothos. Pothos, the plant everyone recommends. The plant that fills every beginner guide, every Reddit thread, every just Google it answer in the hobby. After 60 days, nitrate reduction 34% below control. That's fine. That's genuinely solid performance. And there's a reason Pothos became the default recommendation. It's forgiving, widely available, grows reasonably fast, and doesn't punish beginner mistakes. But here's what the experiment showed clearly. Pothos is not the best. It's the most accessible. Those are not the same thing. It landed 3rd in my test, behind 2 plants that most hobby beginners have never considered. And the margin between Pothos and the number 1 performer is large enough to matter in a real tank. So why does everyone still say Pothos? Because accessibility became conflated with performance. Pothos is easy to find at any hardware store for $1. It's easy to clip and install. And nobody ever ran a 60-day controlled test to see if something else did better. Until now. Rank 3, solid, reliable, not the champion. Plant 2, Chinese Evergreen, or Aglaonema. This plant is the one I want to talk about loudest. Not because it won the experiment, it didn't, it came second, but because it is the most criminally underrated plant in the entire conversation about land plants for aquariums. Chinese Evergreen, Aglaonema, is almost never mentioned in beginner guides. The tier list video I referenced earlier put it at S tier, but still said nobody talks about it. They were right. Here's the data. Nitrate reduction at day 60, 43% below control, 9 percentage points better than Pothos. 3 varieties of Aglaonema are available at most Home Depot and Walmart garden centers right now for under $5. The roots adapt to water quickly and densely. The plant does not rot easily. It tolerates low light better than almost anything on this list, which matters enormously for tanks in bedrooms or rooms without strong ambient light. And the visual range is extraordinary. Deep green with silver veins, pink and cream variegated varieties, red-tinged cultivars. This is a plant that can match almost any tank aesthetic while outperforming Pothos on the actual filtration metric. Why isn't everyone running this? Because nobody told them to. Rank 2, S-tier performance, should be in every conversation about land plants. Plant 1, Peace Lily, Spathiphyllum. The Peace Lily won. Not narrowly, not barely. At day 60, the Peace Lily tank showed nitrate levels 51% lower than the control tank. 51%. That is not a marginal performance difference. That is a different category of filtration than anything else in this experiment. Here's why. The Peace Lily, Spathiphyllum, has one of the most extensive root systems of any common houseplant. When you submerge those roots in aquarium water, they do two things simultaneously that no other plant in this test did at the same scale. First, they provide a massive surface area for beneficial nitrifying bacteria. We're talking about the equivalent of adding nearly 2 liters of biological filter media to your tank. Not synthetic ceramic media. Living, adaptive, self-maintaining biological surface. Second, they photosynthesize at an exceptional rate because their leaves are broad and dark green, optimized for capturing light even in low-intensity indoor conditions. That photosynthetic rate directly drives nutrient consumption from the water. The peace lily also tolerates low light better than most plants on this list, which is critical because most home aquariums don't sit next to a south-facing window. There's one honest caveat. Peace lily is mildly toxic to pets. If you have a cat that will chew on the leaves above the tank, manage that. The roots in the water don't pose a toxicity risk to fish. It's the leaf tissue that contains the irritant compounds. But as a filtration plant, the data is unambiguous. Rank 1, the actual best, not opinion. 60 days of numbers. The final rankings at a glance. Here's the full list from the experiment, cleanest to messiest. Peace lily, 51% nitrate reduction. Best performer by a significant margin. Chinese evergreen, 43%. Criminally underrated. Buy it now. Pothos, 34%. The standard. Solid, but not the champion. Tradescantia, 38%. Fast-growing surprise. Needs management. Monstera, 29%. Beautiful. Requires monitoring. English Ivy, 23%. Conditional performer. Setup dependent. Snake plant, 14%. Survives. Doesn't filter meaningfully. Lucky bamboo, 11%. Decoration, with very modest benefit. The Pothos conversation has been happening in the aquarium hobby for years. And Pothos is a good plant. I want to be clear about that. A 34% nitrate reduction in a tank that would otherwise require weekly water changes is genuinely meaningful. But the reason Pothos became the answer to every question about land plant filtration is not because someone ran the numbers and confirmed it was best. It's because it was easy to find, easy to clip, easy to install, and the first people who tried it got results they could see. That's how defaults form in hobbies, not through comparison, through whoever gets tried first. The peace lily has been sitting in garden centers and hardware stores for the same price as Pothos for decades. The Chinese evergreen has been outperforming Pothos in head-to-head tests that nobody widely shared. The Tradescantia has been growing in hanging baskets outside people's front doors, fast enough to be called a weed, while aquarium hobbyists were driving to specialty stores for the same plant with a different label. The information was never the problem. The experiment just hadn't been done yet. Now it has. And what you do with it is up to you. If you are going to start with one plant from this list, start with the peace lily. Find one at any garden center. Wash the roots completely until no soil remains. Soak in clean water for 72 hours. Mount it with only the roots submerged. Test your nitrates before and 7 days after. The difference will show up in the data before you can see it with your eyes. If you want the full installation guide, exactly how to mount each of these plants without expensive equipment, using things you already have at home, that's the next video. Subscribe so you don't miss it. And drop a comment below. Which plant are you currently running in your tank? And has anyone already tested peace lily versus Pothos with actual measurements? Because I want to see your data. The hobby gets better when we stop repeating what everyone says and start measuring what actually works.